Okay, so today in the second part of our module 4, we are talking about about trauma, birth energies, and in great detail about the movement towards the mother. So, what is it? So, first of all, we learn how to release a trauma. Then we are learning all about birth energies and what it has to do with family constellation and why we need to know it. Then we are talking about the process of birth, because today is everything about giving birth or getting born. In the light of this, we're also talking about rebirthing. And then, of course, we're talking about the interrupted movement towards the mother in a family constellation. So let's look at trauma release. We can release a childhood trauma. We can release a family trauma. We will work with the subconscious mind when we release a trauma. And we will look at trauma and guilt and what this has to do with each other and why it is important. So, starting with childhood trauma. Emotional trauma occurs when one's ability to walk away from a situation is taken away through physical or psychological force. That means the freedom of making choices is taken away from an individual, and the emotion of guilt or shame is present. These two need to go together to create a trauma. An emotional trauma, not a physical trauma, an emotional trauma. Emotional trauma happens in childhood. The children cannot walk away from the situation because children are helpless normally, yeah? And as younger they are, as worse it is, right? Second, they are in alpha state, meaning up to 7 years old, remember, and exposed to suggestions. So let's do one actually, unfortunately, very common occurrence, that there is a sexual abuse of a child in the family, yeah. Then the abuser, let's say the uncle, right, is abusing a child under 7 years sexually and says, you can't tell that your mom or your dad or they sent you away. Yeah? And this is in the subconscious mind of the child who is in alpha state. Oh, it feels guilt, right? So because it cannot, there is a secret that it cannot share with the parents, and it's something that the child is very uncomfortable with, yeah? But it is not able to share that, and therefore it feels guilty. Or ashamed, same thing, yeah? And then, because that is a trauma, the subconscious mind will hide it to prevent the mind from reconnecting with the trauma again, because it hurts so much. And this is what we have to deal with, because these traumas are not memorized in the frontal lobe or wherever, the conscious mind resides. And so we have to look for it. It's hidden. But rest assured, the subconscious mind knows it. Because it's not gone, the memory is not gone, the information is not gone. It's just in a hidden drawer somewhere. That the child, even as adult, cannot access anymore so easily. Family traumas are similar. Think of the childhood trauma, but the trauma comes from an entangled person. It's not the client's own childhood trauma or any other trauma, right? So this client is entangled with a person who is traumatized, emotionally traumatized, through one of the three dynamics in family constellation that are. Now it's your turn. Please unmute. Connie?
So we're looking at, oh, sorry, you go, Connie.
Who wants to start? What's the first
Sorry.
one?
Sorry, Maya. What was question again?
I asked for the three dynamics in family constellation.
Three dynamics.
Yes, you should. Anybody.
Order of love.
That's not a dynamic.
Brother, me, then you.
Thank
Yes.
you. That's one. Rosemary?
I follow you.
That's one as well. Second and
And
third.
atonement of sins.
Yes.
The one I was
Good.
trying to remember.
Very good. Very good. Right. So, family trauma is an unacknowledged disorder in the family system that is not balanced, often leads to a family secret, is always a fear of dying, either de facto or perceived. That is always a trauma, also in early childhood trauma, because if you think of this child that is sexually abused, it doesn't know what's happening, it feels completely unsecure, it has no help from the parents or somebody it trusts, and it feels like they could die. Yeah? So trauma is the perceived threat of dying. Obviously, it's not dying because then the trauma is fulfilled as a murder or something. Yeah. So a trauma is always a perceived threat of dying. Yeah, that's important to understand. It leaves a deep wound in the soul of the family, of course, and it passes on to the next generation through epigenetic damage, inheritance, right? Or the passing over of the epigenetic damage is inherited by the descendants. We need to heal family traumas in order to go ahead in life, because being entangled with it, meaning living subconsciously the trauma as if it would be your own. Hmm? That is why it's causing suffering.
Maya.
Yes, Connie.
So it needs to be let go and heal in order to go ahead in life. But because this family trauma is not our childhood trauma, then how do we know that that is a family trauma?
Because you have something else. You have like an allergy, or you have not success in, it could be anything.
Okay.
Not success in life. So you just look for
You
help.
mean there is something not going well in our lives? So
yep. Something is burden you, and you understand you need help to look at it, and you find your way to family constellation, guided by your own, higher self, if you will, your own family system, the morphogenetic field, and and then it will be revealed. So that's the system. So remember,
there's no other way.
Yeah, remember, in an entanglement, the burden that somebody is suffering of is not the same as the one they are entangled with, right? In epigenetic inheritance means that the epigenetics are damaged, but the outcome of a damaged epigenetic in somebody else can be completely different. Than the original one, right? Than the trauma that was originated before. So common family trauma is an interrupted movement towards the mother, because the interrupted movement towards the mother is an early childhood trauma, and it can be, as you know, inherited. And we often see that this is going through the generations of mothers in a workshop, right? To find that generation where the love of the mother love can flow. That's where we start. So it is not necessarily just one childhood trauma. It could be a family trauma as well, and this is actually most often is as well. So every time you have an interrupted movement towards the mother in front of you, you always place a grandmother there as well to see if it's a repeated pattern or not. And how do we see that? The grandmother looks either happy towards their own child, the mother, or and loving and inviting. Then there is no interrupted movement towards the mother if the mother can turn around and go to the mother, or the mother herself cannot go to the mother, or the grandmother is dismissal towards her daughter. Then you have to put another generation. You have to put one generation after the other until you find the one mother who is loving and open and ready to give love. And that's where you start, with your interrupted movement towards the mother, which we will have a step by step today. So remember when we talked about the emotion of guilt and shame, this is normally not what is being expressed. Sometimes the morphogenetic field makes shortcuts, and indeed the representative says, I feel guilty or I feel ashamed, which is brilliant, but often it is more anger or fear that comes through, right? So that's not where we stop then in this case. So let's talk about trauma and guilt and what that has to do with each other. So a sudden happenings which cause trauma can be released immediately, right? We talked about that yesterday. Crying, shaking, breathing, releasing it to a color, this can all be released immediately if you know it, if you're aware that this is actually happening. And it will not become a trauma. But if the emotion of guilt or shame is added to the shock or fear in the situation, then it becomes a problem. The emotion of guilt blocks the release of shock and fear. And therefore the trauma is held in the subconscious mind to be released later as something completely unrelated, a phobia or an allergy. Right? So without the emotion of guilt or shame, there would not be a trauma. There would be a strong energy that passes through the body and goes away again. Yeah? But with this emotion of shock or shame or guilt, this energy, this traumatic energy is held back. It cannot be released. This is why it's like a mantra. If you're working with trauma, you have to look for the guilt or shame. That's where you need to go. And that's for the subconscious mind, the one thing it doesn't want to give away. And we will see that when we go through regression, how we work around that. Also remember guilt and shame in the map of consciousness. Guilt and shame are the lowest vibration, and these emotions are hiding therefore. And that we have to do for survival. We cannot live in the state of guilt or shame. It's not livable. It's below apathy, and apathy is already difficult to live, right? How can you look after yourself if you're what is it, apathic? If you're apathic, you can't, right? So you need somebody else to look out for you. And then it always appears either as grief, fear, desire, or anger. Desire. So if somebody is an addict, right, for example, does not necessarily need an interrupted movement towards the father. It can also be a trauma that is connected with guilt, and that creates this desire for a substance that becomes abused then. Right, let's have a closer look at guilt and family constellations. So the feeling of guilt is when subjectively an individual feels wrongdoing, right? Meaning wrongdoing is a disobeying of the orders of love and the orders of love as they've been conditioned. Right? So it's not objectively detectable. Guilt is not even objectively measurable or recognizable. It's completely subjective. To the individual and their conditioning. For the individual, it is observed as an inability to look at or go to the others which has been wronged, right? So it's a complete turning away and denial that is behind guilt in family constellations. Therefore, other family members, these are the descendants, are taking over the role to feel the guilt, to look at the victim. That's what you see in a family constellation. And this is when you see there's an entanglement with somebody who is the actual perpetrator or victim. The entangled person has the same symptoms as if it would be their own childhood trauma. This is why you can never stop there. Yeah, it's because it looks the same. So the family constellation, we are always placing to be on the safe side, an ancestor there to see if that is the potential entangler. Okay, now we go through the subconscious mind just very briefly. Of course, there are many, many books and studies about the subconscious mind, but just dense down into a few slides to go through the basics. Because you're working with the subconscious mind of your client, and you need to make sure you understand it and bring it on your side. If you don't have the subconscious mind of your client on your side, you can't go to the traumatic experience in a regression. It won't let you, right? So it's your ally, right? And you can only understand. You need to understand it in order to be able to make it your ally. So the subconscious mind has three functions. The one function is growth and maintenance and repair of the body, right? That's the function of the subconscious mind. You don't need to think about growing. You don't need to think about how to heal a wound. You don't need to think about any of this. The subconscious mind is doing all of this without you being involved. The second function of the subconscious mind is to realize repetitive behavior and make it what we call a body memory, so you don't need to think about it. The typical example, therefore, is the way to work in the morning in the car. After a few years, you realize that you are already at your workplace and you have no idea how you got there. Yeah, because you're completely taken over by the subconscious mind, drives you literally, drives you and your car to the workplace. So that is very efficient. That's the subconscious mind. It's doing that. It saves you a lot of capacity to think about something else, and it's just a brilliant tool for efficiency. Now, growth, maintenance and repair of the body and repetitive behavior, body memory are good things, right, for the subconscious mind. So we have to thank it for it. However, the third function is also good function, but this is where it gets complicated. The third function of the subconscious mind is to avoid pain. And this is not only physical pain, but emotional pain. So the subconscious mind is actually driving you away from a hot stove or away from a deep drop where you could fall down or something. You don't even need to be educated in it or thinking about it. There is a reflex almost to avoid physical pain. Yeah? And that's guided by the subconscious mind. There is also a reflex to avoid emotional pain, and that's where we work with. Yeah. So when there is emotional pain, like let's stay with the example of the young child who has been sexually abused by the uncle. That is of course also physical pain, but the emotional pain is what we are looking at here when we're looking at trauma. That is an emotional pain that the subconscious mind wants to avoid in the future. And this is a strategy of the subconscious mind, is to hide it. So you don't need to think about that every day, all day. You can go about your day. And that can only then reveal that it's still there with what we call a trigger. So then a trigger happens. And the trigger is often something in adulthood. So if you think of stories you might have heard from others that they had all of a sudden when they turned 30 or so, all of a sudden they develop a phobia for, well, it could be anything, cockroaches. I'm just thinking of, because we have a volunteer at the moment who has a phobia of cockroaches. So was fine with insects 30 years, and all of a sudden there's a cockroach and panic attack. Yeah. So there was, just before that, there was a trigger, a memory, a remembering of the subconscious mind. Something happened in this life that they remember. For example, staying with this girl becomes a 30-year-old woman, has been abused by the uncle as a 3-year-old, let's say, yeah? Let's say she has a child born, and the child is a girl, and the girl's on the girl's 3rd birthday, she develops a phobia for whatever, cockroaches, yeah? That's a trigger. Her own child, her own daughter becoming 3 years old, is reminding the subconscious mind of the emotional pain that she has endured when she was 3. Yeah? So for the subconscious mind, there is a memory coming up, boiling up, but it will not reveal its true source. It will twist and turn things, and it will come up with this phobia of cockroaches, as an example. Right? So that is what we call a trigger. Therefore, when you are working with somebody who has developed all of a sudden without any noticeable change in life or reason or anything dramatic, a disease or a phobia or a skin disease are often related to that, then you ask, so what has happened 3 to 6 months before? Because this is sometimes the time the subconscious mind needs to develop a strategy to avoid emotional pain. Reminded by a trigger that this is actually possible. And then something can come up like, oh, that was the birthday of my daughter. She became 3. And then you would say, when you are experienced, you would say, so what happened in your life when you were 3? Right? So that's just a hint, a trigger. So your subconsciousness is concerned with your survival, not your happiness. It will always sacrifice your happiness for survival. So it thinks the remembrance of a physical or emotional pain is, causing the death of the body. Because the situation comes again and then you will die. And the subconscious mind has as a priority in its functioning to secure the survival. So it rather sends a phobia or a disease which makes you survive, but you're probably not happy, than risking any chance that this can happen again. This pain can happen again. Now we have to put this all together and look at trauma and trigger. The panic attack, which we now call this cockroach phobia, is an attempt from the subconscious mind to release this emotion. Yeah? It takes enormous energy to suppress the emotion of fear or guilt, which has a very low frequency, of course, we know that. So people suffering a trauma will have less energy and are emotionally weak and fall ill often. So these are all hints for an emotional trauma. So when you have a client coming to you and you can see that already they have low energy and they are emotionally weak and they fall often ill, then there is the chances that there is a childhood trauma is very high. And then one step further, it could not be their own childhood trauma, it could be an entanglement with a forefather's childhood trauma, right? That's just then one step. So remember, one step at a time. First you look at if that's a early childhood trauma, and then if that's not the case, then you go and find the entanglement. Remember, you can only experience the trigger, not the trauma. The trauma is hidden in this drawer by the subconscious mind. Nobody has access to it. But through the trigger, we can work back towards the trauma. And that is where you need to follow the guilt. And we do that when we do that with the regression. And we do the regression, we always have to focus at what point we are, is there guilt or shame or not? And if there's no guilt or shame, regardless how drastic the circumstances seem to be, you go deeper, you go further back. You don't stop there. Because without this feeling of guilt or shame, there is no trauma that no emotional trauma. Yeah. So we do a regression when we have an early childhood trauma, which we look at tomorrow, and we release a family trauma in a family constellation, right? Because the entangled person just needs to release the entanglement, not necessarily the trauma of the entangler, although that often happens, that we can do that in a family constellation by giving victim and perpetrator the space to let the love flow. But if you only work with the entanglement, because sometimes that's not going to happen, and you can release or help the client to release the entanglement, then for them, the trauma would also be released. Okay, so yeah, now we're going to birth energies and rebirthing. Is there any question to what I have just said? And don't ask me about regression yet, because that's what we do tomorrow. Right? Okay, very good. Let's look at birth energies and rebirthing. Has anybody done a rebirthing yet? Yes, Karen? Where did you do that?
That was years ago. That would have been like probably 25 years ago.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Right. And how was this done? Like, was it a group session or a private session or?
It was one-on-one. It was a one-on-one session with a counselor, with a therapist.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
And I can't
All right.
remember. Yeah.
Yeah. So there are many, and it's it's not a new thing. Even Bert Hellinger did rebirthing in his workshops. That's not a new thing. I just introduced to one method only because I know it works, and I know there are many other methods. Some work well, others don't work well. I have experienced a method that didn't work at all, so I know what I'm talking about. There are different things around the year, and this is the one I'm introducing you is coming from Malcolm South. It's very easy to learn, to understand, to perform, and it's safe and it's very effective. So when you hear from others they have done rebirthing and it sounds completely different, that's okay. There are many methods to do that. So first of all, let's talk about the birth. Definition is birth, a change from non-physical reality into a physical reality. That's it. Then we talk about the heart, which plays a big role in not only in the physical body, but spiritually as well. We will talk about birth energies. We will talk about how a human is created, and I have a little animation for you. And then finally, we talk about rebirthing. And also, we are talking about the interrupted movement towards the mother, of course. So, birth energies. Have you ever heard the term birth energies? Is this something you have ever heard before? No? Okay. Me neither before I went through this module with Michael Southwood. So, if you ever have wondered, especially if you have children, if you ever have wondered how is this possible that you are carrying, for 9 months this little baby in your womb, and you grow with it and you're so attached to it, and you are one, obviously, right? That you have this strong desire to press it out and let it go in the unknown. That is because there is a specific energy created for the purpose of birth that gives you superpower. As you know, when you had a natural birth, you know how immensely power you need to do that. This is a specific energy that is created from the body for this specific event, and only for this event. And that is called birth energy. From the moment the birth starts, which is normally defined as when the water breaks, or the first contraction, depends on what comes first, or at latest, the opening of the cervix. the first opening of the cervix. From this moment on, these energies are created in the body of the mother. Very strong energies. And also in the body of the baby. The baby creates the same birth energies with this at the same moment when the birth starts, because also from the baby there is enormous energies needed to press out of the womb of the mother. It is not straightforward and doesn't plop out like when a dog has puppies, right? That's a completely different story. No, Rosemary, just in case you think it's the same with children, no. They're not plopping out like the puppies. So we're talking about birth energies in a normal birth. We're also looking at birth energies in a fast, interrupted, and forced birth, because they are very different. We are talking about birth energies in a slower or traumatic birth. And we are finally talking about the problems of a cesarean section in the light of birth energies. And also about PPD, postpartum depression. Okay, so I will introduce you now to the concept of a normal birth. It takes 6 to 8 hours. So let's check who has had children, Karen and Kerstin. So, Kerstin, how long was your, did you had a natural birth? Or, yeah, and how long was it?
Went to the hospital 2 o'clock, baby was born at 8 o'clock in the evening.
So how long was it?
So from 14 to 8, well, 6 hours.
Perfect. And
Yeah,
you,
my
Karen?
husband said he hasn't got longer time.
The baby neither. Wonderful. So that's it. And Karen, and you?
Are we talking from when you very first had the very first contraction going, is this labor? Or from when you knew that you were, like from waters breaking or, into more engaged labor?
Well, so sometimes the water breaks and you don't give birth for 2 days. So
Yeah,
that's
no,
not when the birth
mine would have
starts.
been in the 6, all of my 3 would have been in the 6 to 8 hours.
Yeah, fantastic. Very good. My son was also 6.5 hours.
Mm.
And it was not the water breaking because it was way before, it was more the opening of the cervix.
Yeah.
When it starts. So that's always, the opening of the cervix is normally the last moment of the beginning of the birth. But it could be the first contraction as well. Not the pre-contractions, the birth contractions, the big ones. Okay. It releases a huge amount of instinctive birth energies in both mother and baby. So in this moment when the birth starts, yeah, you go.
Sorry, you're saying it takes 6 to 8 hours. So Daisy, our last, took 1 hour and 11 minutes from the very beginning to the end.
Ah, yeah.
So
Then
she
you
was
will see what
fast.
you will see what happens there in a fast birth and some symptoms, and then you tell us if you can see that in your daughter or son.
Okay.
In your daughter. Okay. So the baby needs to go through the birthing channel to stabilize the spirit in the body. We will look at that in greater detail. This is why every birth that doesn't go through the birth canal is, it's a little bit problematic for the child, at least for the child, if not for the mother. Baby needs to use up all birth energies by struggling to move out of the womb of the mother, and the mother must use all her power to push the baby out. Otherwise, this very specific energies that are only created for this event are going to be stuck because they cannot be released in any other way other than giving birth, right? So the baby has to stay uninterrupted with the mother until the colostrum has been delivered in a normal birth, yeah? So baby comes out 6 hours to 8 hours. It's been laid on the belly of the mother, and then it normally tries to find the tits of the mother to get the colostrum. That's an instinct. Yeah. And this is healthy um, a healthy struggle, if you will. Yeah. Reaching and trying to reach, and that's very, very healthy for the baby. If it's successful, then of course. The baby needs its protective shield of light for several weeks, and therefore has to stay with the mother in the so-called 40 days bed. Have you heard this term? No? Yes, you have. So this is in many, many, many ancient wisdom schools that are concerned with birth, or midwives who have a very thorough, not clinical education, who are learning from older midwives and so on about natural birth. This is a recommendation that the mother stays 40 days in bed, if you will, with the newborn baby, and that the baby should not be allowed to be handled by other people, right? Because it is so vulnerable, and it stays safe only really with the mother. Now, if you think of the way they have handled, not so much now anymore, but a few decades ago, they took the baby away from the mother and bathed it for some reason, and did some procedures and some injections even, and closed it. And before the mother got it back, so the baby wasn't able to get the colostrum first thing. And also already here, this protective sheet of light is damaged, right, through this handling. So thankfully, I haven't heard about that. That is still the procedure. I don't know about hospitals, but definitely not in birth houses or home births. So the father doesn't need to be involved in the 40 days bed. Yeah, Rosemary?
The father needs to be properly instructed. What is properly instructed?
Well, it needs to be instructed that how to handle the baby and not to take it away for too long from the mother, and just not just randomly. Oh yeah, give me the baby. I do what I want with the baby. Now it's my baby.
No, you have to learn how to hold the head and stuff like that,
All
Rosemary.
that,
And
yeah.
there's really a soft spot on the head and stuff like that. You normally do this instinctively. Even like Willie, for example, he did it pretty well from the beginning. But you are very careful. Even if you have, like when I had Lucas, and people came that already had 3 or 4 babies, and they said, "Oh, just give me Lucas." I just wouldn't.
No,
It's just
exactly.
it's just like, no. Well,
No.
I had already 3 babies. I said, I don't care.
Mm.
No, it's
That's
well,
true.
it
And that is an instinct, Kerstin, of the mother to protect the child and its vulnerable energy field
yeah
from the intrusion of others, even if they all mean it well. But you are not handling your newborn baby around like a
yeah
can of
it's
sugars or something,
yeah
Yeah. And as a mother, you do that. It's just an instinct. You don't want that. Yeah. Um, so what else is here? Yeah, let's look at the concept how the human experience, I have to say, is being created, right? So I'm referring back to what I talked about yesterday. We have the physical body, the home is Earth. We have the astral body, which lives in the astral world, and we have the world of light, where the spiritual body belongs to, right? And I just made some different shapes and colors so you can follow on this little animation. The higher self needs to be reunited with the astral body, which is the emotional body, which is left behind at the end of the last life to go home to the light, because they are separating. They are still connected, of course. They are individualized. They know they can't. There's no, you can't pick up a different. Like maybe you can actually. That would need some spiritual healing when you pick up a different astral body. That would be fun. I have no idea if this ever happened, but so far, let's not go into problems here. The normal case is that the spiritual body, the higher self, wants to reunite with the astral body to find a new physical experience for a lifetime. So the soul needs to learn the planned lesson. Remember, astral world, they are in their emotion, they get some instructions there, and they ponder on it. They reflect their emotions in others because they are with the same emotions in the same realm, and then they decide, I want to change something. And in order to change something and to become another emotion, to go into higher frequency, we all need a body. So the soul needs to learn the planned lesson in the new body, and therefore has to be in line with the karma of mother and father, because if this is not in line, the lesson cannot be learned. Right? So this is a complicated, to find mother and father and let them meet and mate and create a baby. That is quite a thing, right? So this is why life is so precious, because it takes a lot of planning and making things work, so that there is actually a body that is suitable for the astral body and for the spiritual body to have the lesson learned they want to learn. And then, of course, we have the physical body. That's the one we are most comfortable with. The body, however, also has the requirements. The new body, it needs to be stable and genetically intact. Also, that needs to be provided by mother and father. And this is why, as a matter of fact, we are all incarnating most often in our own family system. So when we have a family constellation and we are looking at 7 generations, chances is that you have been one of the ancestors, if not 2 or 3. As a soul, astral body, right? So this is just briefly what requirements there are. Now imagine this, they have been met. So the chosen women and men, they have met and and she becomes pregnant. Then we have like the embryo developing in the first 3 months, week 1 to 12. There is something very magically happening. There is the heart is creating first thing out of 2 vessels. The artery, the later artery and vein is created, the organ, the heart, nothing else. That's what the first thing that happens in this little body, where the cells are clumping and developing and separating and stuff. And this has a good reason why this is. And it is not only because when it starts to pump as early as week 5 to 6, this is when you can actually see it on an ultrasound. This pumping is not only pumping blood through the veins, because there is no organs to deliver blood to. What this pumping is, it creates a strong electromagnetic field that is measurable. You can measure the electromagnetic field of your heart. And this electromagnetic field is attracting the astral body. This is how the astral body is able to come into the physical body. Now, this heart needs to practice and pump and get stronger, and around week 13 to 16, the astral body is so attracted by this electromagnetic field, which has a specific frequency towards the emotional body that it is, so it can attract it, that they can combine. This is why you normally wait till week 12 or 3 months until you announce that you are pregnant, because before it is quite unstable and uncertain that the pregnancy goes through. And this is mainly because if there's any fault, the astral body doesn't want to go into it, right? If there's anything not right after all this careful planning on the astral plane, then the astral body says, no, that's too risky. We are not going through. We're waiting for another chance. And then you have the miscarriages. So, however, the next step is now over 3 months, you have week 17 to 40, and the spirit, your higher self, is starting to surround the body with the soul. Just to surround them, starting to protect them. That is when the mothers become this glow, because there is another light that is added to the mother, which comes from the baby spirit. Now, when we're coming close to birth in week 40, we have our 6 to 8 hours of giving birth, and that is when the spirit from the world of light actually is able to enter the body. And it does enter it in the moment the baby goes through the birth channel. That's when it's entering it. And then you have the baby born. Here it is. Yoo-hoo, right? Now, from the first day until death, you have this human experience with a combination of spiritual, emotional, and physical body. And it goes about its thing, and it tries to, because it doesn't remember the lessons that it wanted to learn from the astral plane. So it just like in the dark, tapping around, finding its way, following hopefully the guidance of the higher self, who's the one who would drive this human existence towards this new experience, where it has the chance to change the emotional frequency, right, from a lower to a higher, obviously. So now this is signified with a different color for the triangle, which means the emotion has become a higher frequency. And then, it's time to leave. That could be after a long, long, long life, or it could be a very short life. And then the heart is kind of pumping less and less and less until it kind of has its last beat. And when it has its last beat, it stops to beat. The electromagnetic field is also stopping. And therefore nothing to hold the astral body or the spiritual body. Yeah? So the soul is leaving the body before the body decays, because the heart is not holding it back. However, if there is a machine attached to a body to make the heart artificially pump, the soul cannot leave. Yeah, it's still attached to the body, even if it wants to. So that is the little animation and explanation how, in a nutshell, in a very simplified nutshell, a human being can be created. This is just everything together, so when you recap it, you can make a screenshot and put it in your notebook, so you remember when you watch the videos. Now let's talk about the heart. So as you can see in this animation, it has a very special function, right? It has a special function to attract the emotional body and the spiritual body to become one for this human experience in this particular physical body. And when you think about it, and I did that, of course, when I first discovered that, I was fascinating, and I studied as much information, I gathered as much information as I had about the heart. And it's really interesting what the heart is also doing. The soul, that is also called, by the way, the spiritual law of gravity. Yeah, that this electromagnetic field that is created to hold the soul and the body close, the spiritual body close. No? In a meditation, in deep sleep, and in pranayama, which is a breathing exercise, right, the heartbeat slows down. And therefore, the electromagnetic field becomes weaker, and the spirit and soul can go on a trip home. That's why in the night when you sleep and the heartbeat slows down, your soul is able to travel astral worlds, even if you don't remember it. And if you remember it, that is called an OBE, an out-of-body experience. And there's lots of footage on YouTube and everywhere, and books about people who have OBEs. And if you're interested in it, you're welcome to Google that, and it's very interesting what has been reported there. Right. It has to do with the heart. So in spiritual traditions, you do this meditation or pranayama, whatever, to slow down the heartbeat, to create consciously an out-of-body experience. So you can remember it, because when you're sleeping, you can't remember it. So that's one of the purposes of some yoga practices, for example. So when the heart is created in the fetus, or the fetus is the heart actually, right? The next organs after the, or limbs actually after the heart, are the hands. So the sheet or the chest around the heart that is protecting the heart from damage, because there's a bit of fluid in between the heart, the organ, and the outer sheet or chest. Yeah, this is dividing the cells into arms and hands. So the hands, your hands, are the extension of your heart. And this is why it is so beautiful to hug, or use your hands for stuff, or dig with your hands in soil, or pet animals, or shake hands even if you meet somebody, yeah, because you are actually offering your heart and receiving at the same time. The heart chakra is also an interesting point. It's a turning point from animal nature to spiritual being. The heart chakra is the fourth chakra. It's in between the lower three and the higher three. It has a color green, and it is a turning point. Also on the chart, when you look at the frequency of emotions, it's a turning point from contraction to expansion. And that happens also in the heart area. This is why the focus on the heart area is also a spiritual practice. And to come out of the mind and fail decision from the heart, rather. And not actually from the stomach. There is a saying, you think with your stomach, or there's the second brain or something like that, right? That is the seat of emotions, right? So that would the mind makes decisions, thinking hard and find reasoning for it, right? And if you go with your guts, if you will, yeah, or your stomach feeling, or your guts, you will decide from your emotions, which are conditioned from your childhood. But the true, the one who is connected with your higher self and able to receive information, that is the heart. And I think it is no coincidence that we have so many heart diseases and heart attacks and whatnot, because because there is no emphasis on using this special, beautiful area to lead one's life. Kerstin.
So where does intuition sit, Maya?
Intuition is and yeah, that's always, so you have to help me out. What do you mean with intuition?
Yeah, well, when you for example said gut feeling is not the same like intuition,
I
you
would
get
say if we define intuition as connecting with the morphogenetic field, then I would say this is coming from your there's not a specific feeling that is everywhere. That is your whole energy field who's connecting with the morphogenetic field. If you are talking about intuition, about feeling random things, it's definitely the gut, because it is connected with feelings and emotions.
Okay.
Right? There's a beautiful book. I highly recommend that. For your personal development, not necessarily for the course at all, but for your personal development, Living from the Heart by Nirmala. It's very beautifully, it's like an instruction how you can get out of your heart, out of your mind, or out of your guts into your heart space. To let your life be led by it, if you will.
Maya, sorry, can I just ask something else? Because
Yeah.
you said the heart chakra is the turning point between animal nature and what was the and
Higher
higher higher self? No,
higher beingness.
higher being. So what does this animal nature mean? Like
Animal nature. Well, that is a term that is used for instinctive living by instinct.
Okay, cool. Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
so there's just living for food, shelter, and sex.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
That is animal nature.
Yeah. Thank you.
So let's talk about what is not a normal birth. So if you are lucky you had a normal birth or you gave a normal birth to your children, then chances are that they have a very good foundation in their lives, right? Now, if there is not this kind of birth, then there might be something that you as a facilitator or healer can help with. So first of all, a fast, interrupted, or forced birth is less than 5 hours by definition. So let's talk about, or let's look at Karen's daughter. Is that your youngest? Yeah. Later on, and bear that in mind. So less than 5 hours. The birth energies have been fully formed because the birth started, but they could not be used completely because it needs 6 hours to use them completely up. So that, as a result, there is still birth energy in the mother and in the child. That also means that the mother and the baby are still energetically connected and want to let go of each other to complete the separation. Yeah. So there will be always a struggle with the teenager or with the adult. Yeah. Because this struggle is coming from this excess of birth energies. If you would know about it, and there's this ancient wisdom in midwives that have had a proper training from wise women, they would swaddle the children. That means they wrap in very, very tight cloth, so they can use up their birth energies by struggling for another 4 hours or whatever is left, right? So they are kind of they are kind of making up the birth canal with this cloth that they wrap around the child, that it feels like the birth channel. And then there's also a game that you can play when the children are a little bit older, which we call the struggle to get free game. You would hold the child, of course they need to be small, really, 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 really tight, so that there's this instinct to struggle, to get out of this hug, and you try to hold that for, whatever's remaining, 4 hours or 3 hours or 2 hours, whatever's remaining. Or you repeat it and repeat it, so that the birth energy can be released. So there's no other way to release the birth energies than to simulate the birth, right? Because they are specifically made for that.
So you mean if there's, for example, 2 hours missing, then you would hold the young child for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Until it starts to relax.
Until it starts to relax.
Yeah. So it would struggle. That would be go for 2 hours or 1 hour, and then you repeat it another time, and then you will come to a point where this child will start to relax, and then the birth energies have been used up.
Okay, so but you do not let go.
No, you do not let go. You do not let go. The adult, so let's assume this child who has a birth within 2 hours birth, let's assume it is now an adult that can have a rebirthing, which I will go through with you how to do that, or a regression, because they would probably develop a phobia or whatnot, to release this birth energies. For the mother who is still has this birth energies, she can be guided into a regression to the birth, rebirthing the child and releasing all the birth energies there in this regression. And that doesn't need to be 4 hours, by the way, because it is not a physical release of the energy. It's as a spiritual release of the energy from the energy field, not from the body. That was the fast birth under 5 hours. Now we have a slow or traumatic birth. So let's say over 8 hours, right? Anybody has heard of somebody who had a child? You know, Karen? You know, Courtney? So how long was it, Courtney? What the case you know?
That's me.
Oh, you. Okay, cool. And how long was your birth?
I don't know. I can check with my mom during the break time. So what happened was when she was still, she took a bus to the hospital. Then the doctor examined her and decided that it is time for her to give birth. And then they gave her some medication.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And
then?
then after a while, she gave birth to me.
How long?
But I never asked. I can check with her.
Yeah. So
So
we
in
would
my
call that
case,
a forced birth,
Oh.
right? When you give medication, it's more a forced birth.
Okay, so it is not the same category.
No, the slow, more traumatic birth is so over 8 hours. Some you might have heard from somebody who has struggled to 24 hours to press the baby out. That is very slow, and it's also traumatic for both the mother and the child because it's not supposed to be so long. And this is the birth energies are not there to provide for so long, right? Or a traumatic birth is when something went wrong, and there is a
The mother was in
threat.
shock.
Yeah, there's a threat for mother's life or baby's life. Yeah. So these are the slow or traumatic births which have the same symptoms. So the symptoms are that the baby or the toddler or the child has a poor concentration and reasoning, and they like to spend time alone. They don't like their water or head underwater, so they don't like, to dive, for example, or they don't like to stick the head underwater in the bathtub or something like that. They feel that puts pressure on them. Yeah, they can be impatient and aggressive, and feeling frustrated, or fearful or feel anger. And it is often somebody who has symptoms as a bully has, pushing others out of the way. These are all symptoms that can point back to a slow or traumatic birth because the child either felt like, that would be a trigger with the head underwater, would be a trigger, doesn't want to feel this agony to be like in the waters, in the birth waters, for example, because it was just too long or too traumatic. It is impatient because it really wants to get out, and for some reason can't because it's stuck or something is wrong, right? And this is also this pushing others out of the way, especially in the kindergarten or something like that. It's also a good hint that it is still struggling to get out, yeah, to get out. So this is the trauma that is repeating itself over and over again. As an adult, such a child as an adult is often coughing, or has psoriasis, or is claustrophobic, and sometimes has self-inflicted wounds because it wants to see the blood, because the blood would remind him of the end of the birth. Because when you give birth, you have all this blood coming out, right, after the baby, and that's also something then in a traumatic or slow birth the baby is longing for, as a relief to see that finally. And then we have the third case, the early birth. It's not a slow birth. It's not no, I put it the other way. The early birth is before the birth started. So before week 40, sometimes way before that, like a really an early born baby, in week some up to week 30, right? There can be week 30 to 35 or something like that, before any birth energies have been released, and that's normally before week 38, or it's very individual, before the baby was ready to leave the womb. Some are just some take longer. For example, my son took 6 days longer. He wasn't ready to come, so the birth just started 6 days longer, right? So whenever, or some babies come earlier because they are ready to come. So it's not always 40 weeks, but it's the readiness of the baby that is determined when the natural birth starts. And normally in normal cases, without any interference, that would be the case, right? But if that is way before that, then no birth energies have been developed. They had no chance to develop because the birth hasn't begun. So these children are quiet and clingy. And they have a separation anxiety from their mother and need mother's energy a lot. So that makes them so clingy because they are sucking on mother's energy. They like to pinch, bite, or scratch as children. And as adults, they're always late. So that doesn't mean when you know somebody or yourself, you're always late, that you have an early birth necessarily. More than one of these symptoms needs to come together to point at that, right? And what you're doing with a child that has been born too early is you would do the pushing game. So the pushing game is to hold the child in the lap facing you, and then with the little feet they would push against your belly, and you would hold it so they can't go anywhere. And they push and push. This pushing would ignite the birth energies to develop and then to be released. That's what we call the pushing game. So that, and you would repeat that often, because it takes a while first to create the birth energies and then to release them with a struggling game, right? So that's a little bit of effort, but it's definitely worth it if you would know about birth energies and what happens with early births, right?
So Maya, would you so with this game, like the young kids pushing against your belly, so you would still hold it and you would still not let it go, like in the other No?
Not letting go.
Okay.
Not letting go, pushing until it cannot push anymore. It is exhausted, and then you would do this the struggling game. And then when that is all exhausted, no resistance, and the baby's not resisting, or the young child is not resisting anymore, and feels relaxed and tired, that's the time where you can say, okay, birth energies are exhausted.
Okay.
Yeah. And now we look at the case of a cesarean section. Now, by everything I have told you about and you have learned today, you can imagine how many problems a cesarean section is causing for the life of the baby. And this is as more shocking because this is a default way to give birth nowadays in the Western world. This is cesarean section. So when there is a cesarean section after the birth has started, because the birth has started and the nurse cannot find the heartbeat anymore of the baby, for example, then they do an emergency cesarean section. Then you have the same symptoms as an interrupted birth because the birth has started but it's interrupted. Yeah. This is more common nowadays is that the cesarean section is performed before the birth has even started, the so-called planned cesarean. And then all the symptoms of the early birth will occur in the baby. Now, when you look at the little animation and at the spiritual color of birth, which is indigo blue, now you can put one and one together and understand why so-called indigo children are so creative and cannot focus and concentrate very long. Yeah, this is not because they are special star beings from another star or something like that. They have been most likely being born through cesarean section. So without going through the birth canal, the spirit cannot come in. And it's surrounding the baby all the time. This is why they have this light or this glow. And because it's the spiritual color is blue, people who are, capable of seeing auras, they see this blue light, this indigo blue. And then they gave them the name indigo children. That is not a coincidence that this all came up when they started with planned cesareans as a default. That's where this all started, right? And they are just so creative because they are not grounded, right? They are not grounded because not going through the birth canal takes the ability to ground away. All right, we are at our break time today, a little bit earlier. That's fantastic. So before we go on our break, just let me know if you want to discuss anything of what you have heard, or repeat, or comment, or you want to digest it now. That's a good idea. So I have 22 past. Let's make it a little bit longer. I see you 5 minutes after half. So in New Zealand, that would be 6:35, and for Koine, that would be 6 hours less, I think.
1:35.
1:35, 5 hours less. Wonderful.
Yeah.
See you then. So now you have the exercise chart on the video. Now we talked about how we do that. And now I put you into breakout rooms, okay? Okay. Proceed with the recording. And then let's just share how was it for you? Start with Koine when you were inquiring your client. What did you find?
Kirsten normally apparently Kirsten has quite a normal, she's gone through quite a normal birth process, 5 hours, which is not far from the standard benchmark that you provided, which is 6 to 8. She shared that she developed a phobia of height. As she cannot stand.
What is it pointing at? What could it point at? A phobia of height?
I'm not too sure if that comes from the unused birth energies.
Maybe
this is the question. Yeah, this is the question that I want to ask. So if along the way, if we assess the client, so how do we? I mean, for me, I think it's pretty simple. For me, it's a forced birth, and it takes a very short period of time. So apparently, I have some issues to deal with. But for Christine, it's just short of 1 hour. So, and then if she's have some phobia, in this case, she's afraid of height. So how do we know if that is something to do with the unused birth energies?
So you would, sorry, you would go in a regression. You would come to the point of birth, and you would guide your client through that's what we call a rebirthing, through a whole birth process. But this time, the birth process will be normal. So that's what you do in a regression, is you're overriding in the subconscious mind the wrong information about the traumatic experience with the right information, as if it would have been okay. Yeah? So the rebirthing is always a perfect birth. So for somebody who had a cesarean section, it's going through the birth canal. For somebody who had a too fast birth, it's taking 6 hours. Not that you don't take 6 hours with your client, but you're suggesting that in the rebirthing that it is normal, that it is all your birth energy, you use all your energies, you use and that is how you guide then through a normal birth, including that the baby is held by the mother, getting the colostrum of the mother first thing, and is protected for the 40 days that are following of any intrusion. And that's the rebirthing. So you're overriding the memory that is in the subconscious mind of the traumatic experience, and in the physical body, the excess or the lack of birth energy that can all equalize. And that is a healing movement. Yeah? And it is not uncommon to do that 2 or 3 times, even a rebirthing. That can happen, but you know that you will see that it will come up when you work with a client for longer. Hmm? So I would
And
definitely do that when she says she is afraid of heights, um, in a way that you know that your heart goes faster and you cannot look down. Is it like this, Kerstin?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
can't even watch anyone on TV when they are
falling.
on
Yeah.
heights. It's like, what the heck? Oof.
Yeah. So that is all, as always. We are always a little bit. Sometimes we're a little bit fishing. So you would start with a rebirthing, and if this is not releasing anything, then you would probably do a family constellation, and see where this fear of heights comes from. And so you have to maybe apply a couple of your tools from your toolbox to find what is really going on.
so Maya, one more question from me. I think just that you shared some symptoms that the children may develop if they falls under the category of slow or trauma birth. But for early and forced birth, other than the phobia, is there any symptom that the children may develop?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
That's a typical sign is a phobia. But
Or is there any similar or common phobia, common type of phobia? Or it
not
can
that
be
I
any
know of. No, it could be anything.
Okay.
Cockroaches or heights or tires, or it could be anything. Pens. Some have a phobia of pens
Okay.
or pencils. Yeah. Good. Thank you for sharing, Connie.
Okay.
Very good.
Thank you.
So, Kerstin, how was your assessment?
Well, so as we've already found out, Courtney had a forced birth, so her mother didn't feel any pain when the due date was coming. So she went to the hospital and then she got medication, and then pretty much it must have been really fast and quick, and the baby came. The mother did have no pain. She can't even really remember. The mother can't even remember. And then the mother was told if it's a boy or a girl. So and then that's pretty much what is known. So I've asked her if what the procedure in Malaysia is. For example, if the baby is taken away and cleaned up, or if the baby is being put on the mother's breast or on the chest, to be held, and so the bonding could start. But Tony doesn't know. Yeah, so yeah, we've established that they are quite attached to each other, and that her mother gets quite she's reluctant to let Coiny go and do her own things. So she gets a little bit agitated when Coiny starts to do that.
So this is one of the symptoms, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is what I've established, as much as I could think of what to ask, and especially in a different cultural environment, and also quite a few years back, things have changed. So try to take that into account. So, but what this means, I'm struggling now. Like, what I can see is that this baby is born in a very fast way, and she has been born naturally. Like, she went through the birth canal, but very quickly.
Yeah.
And and now I just remember that the soul, the higher self,
Yeah, the higher self, yeah.
the higher self couldn't probably wasn't fast enough
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
to catch the time to go there. So
So another question would be for you, Kerstin, to Corneas, if you're suspicious of that, to ask her, you know, if she feels grounded, if she feels, you know, like that, to find out whether maybe her spirit is still detached,
Okay. Yeah,
something
good
like that.
point. Yeah.
Yeah, if Kirsty was to ask me that, my question would be no. I think that's
Yeah.
the reason why I just told you I feel angry all the time when I was young. Yeah, I think I don't feel grounded.
Yeah.
So I did quite a fair bit of work. I meditate for many years. Yeah, not to say that I'm fully grounded, but I don't feel safe when I was younger. So now I think I'm much better. I mean, I'm much better.
Yeah. That's all signs for exactly what you have found out, that was a fast forced birth, right? And because the birth energies have not developed, it was too early, they are so attached to each other. Right? That's a typical sign, right?
Yeah.
They have not let go yet. The birth energies are there to make sure that the baby and the mother can let go of each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in this case, yeah, you would do a rebirthing with Koine, and this time you would wait in the regression. When you go to the birth, you would wait till she's ready. So you would guide Koine to the moment where she's in the womb of the mother, and the mother is not going to the hospital. She's staying at home and waiting for the contractions to start and the water to break and everything else. And then you would guide her through the normal birth process, through the birth canal in the time, the 6 hours, whatnot. And then that she has the chance to develop her birth energies and to exhaust them as well when she goes through it. And then there is a way to do the rebirthing. It is better in person. I have just done it virtually a few years ago. I started to do it, and it's working, but I still think this is one thing that is definitely more powerful in person, because you need to hold your client when you do it, no? And that's more effective, because the physical struggling is important.
Okay, so I can't do it with Kirsten.
Well, I'm coming.
Okay.
When Kirsten is coming, or you come and visit us in New Zealand.
The workshop in Malaysia, remember, next year?
Okay.
Oh, cool. Very
Next to the
good.
beach.
Sounds
Next to the
like
beach.
a plan. Yeah. No.
Okay, Maya, just one question now. When you said in person, and then, so while you do the regression, oh, well, we probably talk about this. Do you hold
I think I will talk about that later.
Okay.
That's coming up. It should come up soon. Okay, so you leave it here. Rosemary, how was your experience?
Well, I learned that Karen was in choose. Well, the mother of Karen was in choose, and it all looks like she had a early or very fast birth. Also, all the symptoms, what she says, is in a way, like as a child, she had eczema or scratched or was very clingy, or also, I'm not sure, the cough is also a sign of early birth, or?
As an adult, not as a child.
Yeah,
No.
and the interesting thing is, just Karen said, just how she feels now. She has all these things, and also she is also always late. Even her husband couldn't train it out of her. So anyway,
Yeah, that's something I noticed, by the way.
and also as a child, also she always loved games, struggling, holding on to each other and struggling to get out and whatever. And even as an adult, she is a very intimate person, but also she has also what we found out, or things from a late birth, or a slow birth. Like at the moment, she has developed psoriasis.
Mhm.
And what else did you? And she also likes to spend time alone. So in a way, but her relationship with her mother, I think there's no interrupted movements towards the mother. It just her relationship with the mother changed after her dad passed away. So I don't think it has something to do with the interrupted movement towards the mother.
So what do you think then?
I would go for a rebirth.
Because of what?
Because the mother was induced and with
Mhm.
all the symptoms.
Mhm. Yeah.
But
So an early
maybe,
birth, an early birth, you reckon?
yeah,
Yeah.
or a fast one. Oh,
Mhm.
early?
No.
Fast? Early?
Sorry, Rosemary. No, we're looking at early and long. So early because it was induced, and then a long labor. So a long birth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there is a early, there is a slow, there is a fast.
Early as in before 38
Time.
weeks. So, at 36 weeks or something like that. And then long as in a long labor.
So remember, the weeks, they can be deceiving because the baby might be ready with 36.
Yes,
Some are.
yes,
but if
this
it's
was
induced, definitely not.
Yeah.
So may I ask a rebirth? Whatever, it's always the same.
Mm.
Even if it's a early or a slow, or it's always the same.
Yeah. The rebirth is always the same. It is simulating a normal birth. But you need to know, when you are guiding your client through the normal birth, you need to know what is her struggle. Was she born too early? Was she too fast? Was she too long? Because you are saying, this time, you wait till you are ready. Yeah? So you need to guide the client with the information you have.
Yeah.
It's not like the standard procedure that you can just apply. It's always individual to the client's a true experience, right?
What section you stress?
Yeah. How you guide them, what words you use, and where do you want them to see themselves in a regression, in a rebirthing.
So may I ask, Karen, why was your mother induced?
She didn't like pregnancy, and she told the doctors that she was at full term and she wanted me out.
No way. She cheated.
She did. She cheated. She'd had enough. I mean, the poor woman, she was working very long hours. She was still working. She had a young son. She would have been on the go, and she would have just decided that it's enough now. I need to be born so she can get back to work. So, yeah, she went and told the doctors that she was already full term and she needed me out, and they
believed it.
Yeah.
That's funny.
But I would say that's quite an important information, no?
Yes, and I did share that information with Rosemary as well.
Yeah.
Well,
I was just because it wasn't coming up, but I think
I agree.
Just in general, I think that is a really important. That is an important information,
And I've even joked to Mum before family constellations about me always being late, even as a child. And it's like, well, you can't tell me when to be on time. You can't do it in my time.
Exactly. You have your own time, right? Yeah.
So, I was really aware that I was sort of running that program. And when I found out as a teenager that that's what she had done, I can remember saying, see, that's why I'm always late, because you made me come early and I wasn't ready.
Exactly. And you got it. That's exactly how it works. Some things are really self-explanatory. So, so we talked about that, Rosemary. What your suggestion was rebirthing, right?
Yeah.
Because of an early.
Early and slow. Yeah.
Okay. So, very good. Thank you for sharing. And Karen, how was your experience with Rosemary?
Well, Rosemary's experience, it was lovely in the sense that Rosemary didn't have a lot of information around her birth. So Rosemary was able to say that she was born at home and around 9 a.m. in the morning, but that was it. That was all that we had to go by. But Rosemary was able to, so we kind of came at this from another angle, and because we've been talking, she already felt that she had an affinity to a slow birth.
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to, so we looked at that, we looked at the slow birth, and then we looked to see whether there was an interrupted movement with the mother, which there wasn't. So we decided that slow birth, rebirthing was the way we were going to go.
Very good. Very good. Very good. So how did you overall found this exercise? Was this valuable that you know how to tackle these topics around birth energies? Yeah, good. Then everything achieved. Very good. Right. So, okay, we are back to our slides. So now we're talking about PPD, which is abbreviation for postpartum depression, a very common suffering of the mother. In case you don't know it, that is a rejection, that comes up here probably, the rejection of the baby after giving birth. Now that can have several reasons. And that's, of course, then for the baby, it's the first interrupted movement towards the mother, right? It's been rejected. Mother wasn't there. So several ways to tackle that. First of all, giving birth in the mother releases maybe a memory of being born. That's a trigger. And that could trigger unrealized or unreleased birth energies in the mother when she was born. And these unreleased birth energies, which are still built up in her, can make her reject the baby, as if she would still, struggle to get out of the womb of the mother, which is this rejection of each other, right? This getting away from each other movement. So that could be the cause why the mother is rejecting the baby. Or the mother herself has an interrupted movement towards the mother, and therefore cannot open her heart towards her child. Yeah, this is why that could be, of course, that needs to be looked at. Which one is which when you work with a client with the PPD. The PPD in turn causes guaranteed an interrupted movement in the baby, because the baby is not with the mother. The mother cannot have the baby, so the baby is with the father or with the family member, or in the hospital in another room, because the symptoms of a PPD is that the mother cannot have the baby around, which is, of course, then for the baby an interrupted movement towards the mother. Here, we perform with the mother a rebirthing, because it was maybe a trigger for her own birth trauma, or a family constellation if there is a suspected interrupted movement towards her mother. Now we are coming to the actual way how we do the rebirthing. First of all, the setup and the preparation. Then we have to guide our client into alpha state. Then, when the client is in alpha state, we guide them back to the time into the womb of the mother, to the moment when it was the right time to be born, right? And we just we say 40 weeks. We say when you were ready as a baby. Then you guide the client through the whole birth process, and in person you would put your arms around the client and the shoulders. I maybe make a little drawing. Let me just finish this chart. You make sure that your client cannot fall or get harmed, either virtually or in person. Virtually is even more trickier, so especially in person, needs to be no sharp objects around, no desks or something. Then you help the client to release all of the birth energy, so screaming, crying, breathing, coughing, whatever, you are representing the mother in this case, right? And you have to praise the client with well done, you're a good boy, you're a good girl, and you also can say, now I finally have you with me, my beloved baby, to make sure that he's staying in alpha state in this normal birth procedure that he would expect to go through, and have the mother waiting for him or her and caring for her. Yeah? When you are virtually with a client, you let the client hold a big cushion to hug the mother, which would be the lap of the mother, or her belly or her chest, yeah, and you keep praising, you're still representing the mother. So other than in a family constellation where you are staying the facilitator, in a rebirthing, you are the mother. Yeah? And Bert Helling has actually done that a lot, and he didn't call it rebirthing at first because he didn't know what he was doing. He just was reacting to what energetically was required until he realized that it's actually a rebirthing, because sometimes the clients were on the hot chair and they were just leaning forward, falling forward, and then he held them, and then they started to struggle, and then it became a birth, right? The rebirthing. And then you have the closing. That means you get the client out of alpha state and make sure he's grounded and back in the room where he's sitting, and that is over. So that is just the cornerstones of rebirthing. And when we have time, I will demonstrate a rebirthing, right? I will do that actually now before we go to the interrupted movement. I want to make you a little drawing because it seems to be easier to do that. That was our, why is this not going? No, hang on, I do a new one. Okay, so we have so it's in person, right? In person. So the client is here. Here are the arms, right? He's in alpha state, so I do this, yeah? Okay. And the helper is behind. Make sure you have a good stand on the ground so you can hold. And the arms, both arms are wrapped around the shoulders. Yeah? And in fact, there's no space here, so you're really holding them tight. You actually hold on to your arms so you can squeeze. Yeah? And then you squeeze while you're guiding them in the regression through the start of the birth. You would say, feel how the walls are coming closer. You are running out of space. You have no space anymore. You need to get out. You know there is blah 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 blah. And then you would guide, and then you are turning your head down, and there you see the door, the light, whatever, the cervix is opening, right? So in this moment, the client would fall forward. Yeah, that would look like this. Okay, and this is why you need a good stand. You need to have a good stand to hold him with your arms really tight. Yeah? Okay? Like this. Does it make sense? Make sure in this moment that he's not slipping through your arms down. Yeah? That is not a birth. They have to tip forward. Okay? And they will, because they are in there. And then this is then simulating the birth, head forward, and then you keep the arms while he's moving forward more and more and more. So your arms, so that while the client is moving more downwards, your arms would slide down the body, like as if it would go through the birth canal. Yeah? And the arms, as you can see here, the arms are inside your hug, if you will. They cannot be outside. They need to be inside. inside like this, yeah? And you start at the shoulders. And then you slide down the whole body, the arms, and it is so tight that you can barely, you use your full power. Yeah, you hold not back. You will not break their arms, but they need to struggle. And they will, as tighter you hold, as more they will wiggle. And that's exactly what you want. Right? And then you slide, so they are tipping forward and they are kind of sliding through your arm, step by step. And then you would go down with them on the knees, still holding them, not letting go, and holding until the legs come out. Then you go tighter and tighter with your arms because the legs are smaller, so tighter and tighter, so the legs have the same pressure all the way to the feet. So then you squeeze the feet with your hands so they really feel how the whole body goes through the birth canal and has the pressure. No? And then when the client has made it out of your arms, then you put his head in your lap, you cover the client with a blanket, and you would praise him like, you're the mother. You would say, now I finally have you here, my beloved baby. It's so good to have you. Everything went well. Remember, you have to override the subconscious trauma. You say, everything went well. You are safe. You always have been safe. You are alive. You know, you are. I nourish you. I care for you. You know, all this. You're suggesting that. So the information can be rewritten that there was a normal birth. By a mother who was present and able to provide what is needed, right? And that would take about an hour and a half normally, this in-person physical rebirthing. And if you have a good friend or a family member, just ask them if you could train with them. And then that is kind of the closing is then to when the release is there and the client is still and quiet and comfortable and breathes normally and is tired and everything else, then you can say, okay, we leave it here. And then you bring them out of alpha state, which I will show you in the regression part, and that's the end of the rebirthing. Okay? Yeah. Okay, so interrupted movement towards the mother. Now, we always talk about that. We see it a lot. You have may had a session already, or you have definitely witnessed this in the workshops, but how does it really work in detail? And what is it? So now we're answering these questions. When it occurs, the signs of it, what to do, of course, and of course we talk also about the father. So the definition of an interrupted movement towards the mother, which is translated from German, die unterbrochene Hinbewegung zur Mutter, is when is based on the fact that every child is drawn towards the mother in search of nourishment, care, love, and protection. That is a natural instinct that every child has, absolutely without any exemption. Without this instinctive energy, the child wouldn't be able to secure its life. And that is in every animal the same. That's just the principle of life. Otherwise, we would not be able to proceed life and give life forward. So, now imagine this is the movement towards the mother. Now, if the child is separated from the mother within the crucial first years of its life, this forward movement comes to an abrupt halt. You know, it wants to move forward. It's like running down the road and want to fly in the arms of the mother, and then all of a sudden the mother is not there, and they have to stop and don't know where to fly into, right? So that's the early trauma. The child is traumatized because it is afraid of dying, because it thinks it's going to die without the mother being there in this very moment. It's very momentarily, this trauma. It's just a short the mother can be away for a day, or the mother can be away for a month. That really depends on the circumstances when this occurs, right? The child is traumatized, meaning there is a perceived threat of dying, and loses trust in the mother to be able to protect it, right? But the energy to run towards the mother is still there. That's like the birth energies. It's not going away. It's still there, right? So now there's a fight between this distrust in the mother and this desire to fly into her arms. Yeah, it's still there. But it feels like it can't do that, and that's what you see in a family constellation. That is like if you think of the opposite, what you see is an adoption. An adoption, in the case of an adoption, the child who has placed, the client, who is or the representative of the client, who has been adopted as a child, has been chosen by the client, two parents which are the adopted parents, not their birth parents, because they don't know their birth parents, they don't know the orders of love. They think that's their parents, right? Now the adopted parents are there. The child who has been adopted has no strong feelings to the parents, to the mother especially. There is not a complete dismissal, there's not a complete openness, there's not a complete loving relationship. There's just no strong feeling. And when you have no strong feeling, you always have to ask, are you adopted? Who is this woman? Because we all, without any exemption, have a strong feeling towards our mother, if we know her or not, right? And we either love her and want to fly in her arms, or we hate her and we want to have nothing to do with it, or we are twisted and torn in between these things. But neutrality, no, we don't have that. So this is how we know that A, we can decide, okay, that doesn't seem to be the mother, first thing. And secondly, we can see if there's an interrupted movement, if there's anything lesser than love towards the mother. You have constellations where there's a child and the mother, and they are totally loving towards each other, and the child, the representative, can easily go to the mother and they can hug, and you can see that in their faces, right? That's the mother, there's no doubt about it, and there is no interrupted movement. That's how it looks like. However, most of the time there is an interrupted movement, because there's so many incidences how this can happen in the first 2-3 years of a child. Yeah. Sometimes even in the wound, when the child is listening to a conversation, for example, that the mother doesn't want the child, wants to abort it, yeah, and she's talking to a friend or the father about it, that could be an early interrupted movement, right? Because the child doesn't feel safe anymore. So it does not necessarily start after giving birth. It can be also before. So where does it come from? What are the typical cases? It could be that the child or the mother has an accident or an illness shortly after giving birth, or within the first 1 or 2 years, and they have to be separated. Either the child or the mother is in hospital and the other part is not there. That was a common practice years ago. I think nowadays the mother has a bed in the hospital. I'm not sure about the child, if the child can stay with the sick mother, but it's a little bit less likely. The mother, of course, can die during giving birth, right? And if that has been, you know, when a woman was supposed to give birth to 10 to 12 children, the likelihood that she might, you know, bleeds to death with one of this birth experience, it was in former times was greatly. So this is why you can see that often when you place 7 generations of mothers there, right? This is something where interrupted movement can happen. The mother can leave the family. She can be dismissed by the father's family, or she can decide she can't cope with the baby or anything like that. That's an interrupted movement causing. the mother is desperate for work and money and may have to leave the child behind to go to work somewhere else, another country or somewhere. That can happen. Or simply the mother's unable to look after the child. Maybe she has a PPD, so she's emotionally not capable, or she is physically impaired or something and cannot perform the duties of a mother. You know, all kinds of cases can happen. This and many, many others that is causing an interrupted movement towards the mother. It happens to the young child who cannot express themselves and are helpless, perceived helpless, right? About, from, as I said, from the conception, not the birth, from the conception on to about approximately 4 years. It can be the rejection of the child in the PPD, and I want to just to make sure you understand what it is not, is when the client is complaining about what the mother did or didn't do, or what she wasn't there enough, or she wasn't good enough. You don't know if there's interrupted movement until you have a representative for the child and a representative for the mother. So the client, whatever the client talks about the mother is all emotionally, does not mean that there is an interrupted movement. You have to look at it before you see it, with the help of representatives. So the clear signs of an interrupted movement are a hyperactive child, because they cannot get the energy from their mother due to an interrupted movement. So they are constantly looking for a source of energy that they can suck onto. The disregard of the mother is a typical sign of an interrupted movement, or talking negative about the mother without complaining. That's a different thing. But in all these cases, they can't let go of the mother neither. So they still talk about her. They still want to have some sort of contact with the mother, even if they are quite a distance away. They feel the interrupted movement, the towards movement towards the mother is still present as well. Not only the denial or the dismissal of the mother, also the movement towards. So you would have signs for both, right? And you don't know until you put it to the test. So when you have a family constellation, 2 representatives, then you see without any doubt an interrupted movement towards the mother when the child can't go to the mother, but wants the mother to come. That is the best and clearest sign of an interrupted movement towards the mother. And of course, anger towards the mother is also a clear sign for an interrupted movement towards the mother. Another sign is that they can't stay in relationships. Relationships are, or the partner one is chosen is often representing the mother. And this part of dismissing the partner, so being drawn to the partner and then terminating the relationship for no reason, this is also a sign of an interrupted movement towards the mother. So when you have a case of a client who said, I don't know why I can't stay in a relationship, I love it, and then I get so bored or tired, or then I have to finish it again. That's kind of a sign of an interrupted movement. So let's look at what to do when you have found out there is an interrupted movement. In the family constellation workshop, you would ask representatives for mother and child to face each other. And then you would suggest, and then you would ask the child, can you go to the mother? And the child would say no. They can take a step or two, but they cannot go all the way towards the mother. And they might even say, I want the mother to come to me. But of course, that's not going to happen. The mother has to stay where she is. So the child, in this case, you suggest the representative of the child to go on the knees or even lying down on the belly to make themselves really, really small, because they are behaving as if they were the adult and not the child in this relationship. Yeah, they want to dictate their terms. The mother is not supposed to move. The mother, the loving mother who has not herself an interrupted movement towards her mother, always has this urge to go towards the child, right? You have to stop the representative to do that. There is no healing in that. They have to stay where they are. And if they have moved, you have to send them back to where they came from. Yeah? The child has to say, please, one of our magic words, please, please, mom, as often as necessary until it can move closer to the mother. There's only please. And then, of course, the sentences of resolution, I'm just a little one, you came first, and all of that. But the please is the most important one. And it might be difficult for them to say it. And then you would start with acknowledging what is. You came first, I came after. You are big, you are tall, I am small. You gave me life, all this. Until it sinks into the whole energy field of this child that it does depend on the mother. And the please would be the appropriate word for all of that. When the please has been said and the child is able to go slowly, step by step, closer to the mother and finally reaches the mother, it will hug the legs of the mother, because that's what little children do. They cannot reach. The mother is not reaching down. It's not picking up the child. The child has to get what it needs. And that is, in this case, hugging the legs of the mother. So in an in-person workshop, they would stay on their knees and they would hug the leg of the representative of their mother until they are completely, and then they have to keep their heart open and receive the love. The love of the mother is always flowing. It is this child who has closed the heart. That's the trauma. So all you need to work on with the client or the representative of the client is that they are able to open their heart. And then the love will automatically flow. In a one-on-one session, or when you're working remotely, you would just make a regression with your client into his childhood, and then go to where the interrupted movement was, and performing a regression as if the movement came to a close, as if the mother would have been there. Same thing as the rebirthing. And then the mother would be there, and then the client faces the mother as a child and says, please, to the mother. Please give me your love. Please give me your nourishment. And then the movement, you guide the client through the movement that has been interrupted, so it comes to an end. And the client can fully keep their heart open to receive mother's love. The client would hug a pillow as a representative of the mother in this case, and not the legs, of course. So that's in a nutshell. And when you are with all the 10 workshops, you are with me over the course of the training and the 6 practice workshops, you will see so many interrupted movements. And now that you know how it looks like, you will immediately see when this is the case, and you will learn from that a lot, right? Through observation. It's always the same, really. It's one of the easier things to perform in a family constellation. It's an interrupted movement. So now we are coming to troubleshooting. What if? So what if the mother cannot face or look at the child? Then we know we have to choose a representative for the mother of the mother. Because she or herself has an interrupted movement towards her mother, which is a grandmother. And if the grandmother cannot look at her daughter, then you have to have the next generation, up to 7 generations, until you find the one mother that looks with love towards the children, towards her child. And then you perform the interrupted movement there. So you start with the first generation where the interrupted movement started. And when you go through the whole process, then the child, the representative of the child, can stand up, turn around, lean against the mother for support, and be a mother. And the first thing this representative is saying to their child in front of them is, I am now there for you. Because this has now changed. They have received the love of their mother, and now they have it for their children. And then you go the same steps with the next generation, so and so and so and so often, until you come to your client. And then he's the last to do this. Because now the mother will look with love at her child. So remember, you can only perform an interrupted movement towards the mother when the mother can look with love towards the child and is ready to let the love flow. What if that doesn't work? Yeah, then you can look for an entanglement in the family of the mother. And I would suggest to choose one representative for the emotion of the mother and work with this first. Because the mother can be entangled with somebody and therefore not be able to open up towards the child. Or she had an abortion or lost a child and is completely obsessed with that child and has no capacities on an emotional level to be there for her surviving child, right? That's what you then see in the family constellation. And then the other possibility is that the mother might have to release her trapped birth energies from her birth, right? Because she might have trapped birth energies that she is still in the movement of trying to get away from her mother, which looks like an interrupted movement, and therefore is not there for her child. That's also possible. What else? What is if the child is not willing to move towards the mother, right? So you have everything set up, the mother's looking at the child, ready to give love and let her love flow, but the child is no, absolutely not. So you try all 7 mothers as before. Let's assume that the mother is going through that already. Then the client should lie down with the arms out and the face on the floor, palms of hands facing up in front of the mother. And I also like them to touch the feet of the mother or the representative of the mother. That is very healing. Just let them there, deep breathing, and something will click into place. It looks a bit radical at first, very religious as well, but it does work, right? Of course, repeated saying of please, please, mom is the way to go to make sure the child can open up the heart space. Yeah. When this all is not working, then you can suggest to your client a rebirthing because he has potentially too much trapped birth energies that is still dismissing the mother or trying to get away from the mother. If the child is a boy, there's another possibility because the child or the boy or the client might be entangled with the father. And the father's angry at his wife for some reason, yeah? And the child is angry at the mother because he is representing the father, right? And that might look like an interrupted movement, yeah? But it is in truth one of the dynamics, rather me than you. Rather, I am angry at my mother than you are. So that's worth trying as well, if nothing else works. And then if you try that as well, and this is also not working, then you just break it up, as we do. because then nothing really comes to into swing. That means that the first step was needed is a realization that it is very stuck. That already is the healing movement for the client. And we do that always. Like when we have exhausted all our resources, we break it up and we don't feel bad about it, because that's exactly what should happen. Otherwise, something else would come up. The morphogenetic field is always to be trusted. Yeah. Okay. So what about the father? It's absolutely the same procedure. It just happens less often. That doesn't mean it doesn't happen. And of course, I have that also a lot. There is an interrupted movement towards the father as well, but it's not so severe, it's not so traumatic, because it's often not the perceived death of the child, right? Because if the mother is still there, then nourishment and care is there. Because the child can survive without the father, but not without the mother, like biologically, right? The instinct energies are built up towards the mother, not the father. So there is no birth energy, just in case you wonder. There is no birth energies towards the father, and the father is not, although some men look like they are pregnant and giving birth and struggling much more than the woman with giving birth. But no, that's all in the mind. There is no birth energies that can build up in the father, and not in the child towards the father neither. So I have here, hang on, I stopped there, hang on, I go back. I have here, I didn't know it starts. I have here a video from you from a workshop where there is brilliantly, or very accurately, the interrupted movement towards the mother. The Nam Shakti is the woman in the center with the glasses, is the mother representative, and the Asian girl at the bottom is a representative of the child. Now we are looking at that together, and then you see how that goes. Let me just get that louder. Oh, it always wants to go back. Okay, now. And when you look towards Sarah. Can you hear that?
Yes.
Can't see
Yeah.
her.
Sarah, what has changed when your parents came?
I feel like I'm being left out somehow.
You don't feel connection?
I'm a bit scared of my dad.
Yeah.
I can see cares from my mom, but I feel like I'm left out.
Mariela, was there something in the early childhood of your daughter that she was separated from you?
Only for a couple of days when she was born, and I went home immediately with her, like on the same day from the hospital, because I had my parents and I felt I had support at home. And but then 4 days later, we had to go back into hospital, and she had to stay there because she was what's the term in English? She was suffering a little bit of yellowish ectoderm. What's the term? Anyway, it's a condition that sometimes affects certain babies when they don't receive enough sunlight. In fact, Ivan had it, and I had it slightly, but with the sunlight, it was enough for us. In Amber's case, she needed to be under the lamp.
Yeah, that's what we have here. We have an interrupted movement towards the mother. Sarah, look at Nam Shakti. Look at your mom. Hmm? Can you go towards your mom? Doesn't look like it. Hmm? No. Say to your mom, Sarah, please. Please, mom.
Please, Mom.
Very good. Please, mom, I need you.
Please, Mom, I need you.
I'm lost without you.
I'm lost without you.
I want to hug her.
But she needs to come first. I'm shocked. She's not there.
I know.
Mm.
I can see her now, though. I couldn't
Yeah.
see her before, but I can see her now.
Look
when she
at
said
her.
that to me.
Look at her and say, I'm here.
I'm here.
I'm always here for you.
I'm always here for
Always.
you. Always.
Let's sit down. Nice breathing. Sarah, look at you. Can you look at her? Can you look at Namsha? Can you see her? Mm. Can you go towards her a few steps?
A few
Yeah.
small steps.
Very good. Just go as far as you can. How much distance is still there?
I think I'm originally like 10 steps away. Right
10
now,
steps?
it's seven
Okay.
steps.
Very good. Very good. Just stay there. Look at your mom and say again, please, mom.
Please, Mom.
I am afraid to die without you.
I'm afraid to die without you.
Mm. I need you.
I need you.
I need your love, your nourishment, and your care.
I need your love, your nourishment, and your care
To survive.
to survive.
Yeah. Deep breathing. Peter, I'm so little.
I'm just a little.
Yeah. And all I want to do is go to you.
All I want to do is go to you
And get the nourishment and care I need.
and get the nourishment and care I need from you.
That's it. Now see how much closer you can go now.
A few more steps.
How far away are you now?
3, 4 steps away.
Very good. Then see how you go on your knees. Yeah, you are very small. You look up to her, right? She's very tall. Say again, please, mom.
Please, Mom.
I need you.
I need you.
Very good. Please let me in.
Please let me in.
And on your knees, you crawl towards her legs. Can you do that?
Not for now.
How far away are you?
I'm not sure.
Then you see yourself lying on the belly, and maybe the distance between you and the mother is just the length of your body. And see if your hands can reach her feet. You cannot see them, but you can feel them. Can you?
Yes. I can feel
Very
them.
good. You feel them. Very good. Very good. So you hold on to her ankle with strong little fingers. Yeah. And then you pull yourself closer to her. Deep breathing. Saying, please, Mom.
I'm trying, but the hands are shaking so much.
Yeah. That's good. Then stay there. Just breathe and let the mother's love flow from her through her feet into your hand. Just slowly, just a little bit. From your hands, feel her love flow through your arms, through your shoulders, down your spine, into your heart. Yes. And now you pull your arms again. Pull yourself closer to your mother. Yes. Very good. Until you can hug her leg. When you have a pillow, grab the pillow and hug her leg. And deep breathing. Breathe all the mother's love in. All the nourishment and care flowing uninterrupted. Breathe in through your mouth. Big inhale and big exhale. Very good. Yes, very good. You're a good girl. Yes, you're doing well. Doing very, very. And breathe. And crawl a little bit higher up so you can hug her waist. Yeah? And press your face against her chest. And now, Shakti, you can hug her. Yeah. And let all the love flow. And Very very. And now you, Sarah, can pull yourself up a little bit higher so that you're standing. Yeah? And give her another hug. That's it. And then you say to your mom, thank you. That's it.
Thank you for being there for me.
Very good. Say to her, now I take all your love in. Now I can take all your love as it is.
Now I can take all your love as it is.
Yes. And it is more than enough for me.
And it is more than enough for me
To secure my life.
to secure my life.
And nourish me. Take your time.
I feel like I'm ready to say it out.
Good. Well, you have come a long way. Very long way. We leave it there. Hmm? Yeah? Now Shakti say to Sarah, yes,
Yes,
my little girl.
yes, my little girl.
I love you.
I love you.
And I'm always there for you.
I'm always there for you.
Very good. How are you, Sarah?
Still a little bit scared,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like I've got someone finally to get some.
Very good. Okay, that's great. So we leave it here for now. Okay, I hope you could see and hear everything clearly. Good. Very good. So here you could see that was everything I talked about in there, really. No? So just as a little bit of a fun quiz, what did you see what I have talked about? Just unmute and let's have a chat about it. In no specific order.
That the daughter always moves towards the mother.
Yep.
The daughter is lower than the mother.
Yep.
And she's
Child is-
separated by the mom.
Say it again.
She's separated from the mom when she was when she was born?
We don't know. Yeah. Sorry, of course we know.
Yeah.
Yes. Sure. Mariela told us this. Yes, she was separated by 4 days after she was born. So clear sign. Yeah. Very good. Mm-hmm.
The child always says, please.
Yes.
And you get the daughter to touch the feet of the mom?
Yeah, because she was really resisting.
The mother wanted to actually hug the baby already.
Right. Yeah,
That was not ready yet. We were not there.
She was not there. She was 10 steps away from the mother. So the mother really wanted to go to the child. Yeah, to hug her. Yeah, right.
And then Maya, I think you did not get her to lie down with the palms, with the face facing on the floor?
Yes,
I don't think
I
so.
think. Was she?
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so. So you get her to touch the feet of the mom, but why don't you get her to just lie down?
She must have lied down. Otherwise, how can she touch the feet of the mother? I wonder.
She can kneel. I mean, you can touch the feet
Maybe
of
she can kneel, yeah, but she would be very low. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
She did end up lying down because she couldn't crawl any closer.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. She crawled. That's why I have the intention. She did not lie down.
No, because to get closer, it was to move her body. If she lay down, her body wouldn't be close enough to touch the mother's feet.
Yeah.
And the healing movement was in the child receiving the mother's love.
Yes. Yes. And it was slow. Everything is slow motion. Yeah. You have to take your time.
That's right. Never any fast motions.
Very slow. And it can take 40 minutes uninterrupted movement towards the mother. That is normally not that was 15 minutes, so we were lucky. This is why it shows this video, because it can be much longer.
But I feel a lot of sadness.
Mm-hmm.
I feel a lot of sadness when I
watch. A
lot
of sadness. Yep. So you have either anger or sadness or both normally in the child.
And there was still a lot of hesitation from the child.
Yeah.
Still, even in my opinion, even at the end, there was still a sense of okay, I accept it where it is at the moment, but I felt not resentment, but not 100%.
Yeah. Which is very accurately describing how it works. It's normally not a one-time fixes all situation. You are going with one step at a time. So these interrupted movement can take time. They might need to be performed throughout the years, twice or 3 times in the course of years to come to full end. So no rush, no expectation, no happy end expected. That's not the happy end. Is every movement, every single movement that gets closer to the mother is success, right? Even if it's just one step. Yeah, I think you found pretty much everything in there, so well done. Is there any other? We leave it here. Is there any other question that you might want to ask regarding what we have shared today? Are we good? All right, wonderful. See you tomorrow. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.